Hello and welcome to another Blender Know-How tutorial. Today we're going to learn how to create chains, and we're also going to play with some depth of field just to get a nice effect. We're going to start by adding rigid bodies, and let's go ahead and get started so we don't take up too much time. So open up Blender and get past the splash screen. I'm going to turn my screencast keys. So down here in this bottom left corner, if I hit N, you can see it got rid of this, and it tells you what button I pushed. So, okay, now we can officially get started. I'm going to first delete, whoops, wrong button. I'm going to delete this and add torus. Now, we're going to first make a chain, or one chain. So, go ahead and go into edit mode by hitting tab, and then down here, go ahead and click it looks like a box. You can see like 2, 4, so you can see 7 corners out of the 8 of the box. Yeah. Go ahead and click that. It should be a lighter. So don't make it gray, make it lighter. And that makes it so you can select vertices that are behind, so the ones that you can't see. So from this view, I can't see the bottom ones, where if it was dark, it would only select the top ones. Anyway, so let's hit G, middle mouse button, to lock it to the axis, and we've now made a simple chain. I'm going to hit smooth, give it a little bit of a nice effect there, and then I'm going to hit 3 to go to the side view. I'm going to hit R to rotate it. Actually, I'm going to hit 5 so that this is orthographic view, and that is it's going to be flat. So I'm going to hit rotate. After I hit 3 on your numpad, hit rotate 90 degrees and make it in the negative. And I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to duplicate it first. So duplicate it, lock it to the Z axis, Z axis, and move it down so that it's about halfway there, maybe even a little bit more. And then go to 7, hit rotate for our R, 90, enter. Now we have 2 chains. Sorry about that. Now we have 2 chains. And now to make a whole bunch of them, we're just going to right click on the first one we made and hit modifier, the add modifier tab, hit add modifier, and do array. And it made one to the side. That's not quite what we want. So right here is where you change that. We're going to hit 0 there, and we're going to try 1 there. And it's going up. So let's just do negative 1.1. Then it's a little bit offset. They're not touching each other, which is what we want. I'm going to move this one down just a hair. And I'm going to do the same thing with that one now. So we know it's not that one. Let's go negative 1.1. And works like a charm. Let's, to change this, select one of them and just change the count. I'm going to change it to 6. Then we're not working with too many with both of them. And we now have a basic chain. And they're all smooth, so that's good too. Next, I will have to go ahead and hit apply on both of those. So right click on both of them and hit apply. Then if you go in the edit mode, just hit P and then hit by loose parts, and that'll separate them. And if you go into object mode by hitting tab, you can now select each one of those. That's what we want. Select the next one and do the same thing. Go into edit mode, hit P, by loose parts. Hit tab. Now we have a whole bunch of separate links. Hit 1 and deselect with A and B to select them all. And we gotta set the origin to the middle, because when you hit the rigid body options or the physics, it works better if each one of these origins are in the middle of each link. And there's an easy way to do that. So we have them all selected. All we gotta do is hit set origin and then origin to geometry. and it puts each one of these has an origin in the center of the link, which is exactly what we want. To repeat, you just go right here, set origin, origin to geometry. But make sure they're all selected so you can do them all at once. Next, we are going to go hit 7, select them all once again. Go over to the, actually it might be easier to come over here to this physics than to do them all at once. And just hit add active. I think if you do it over here, it only does one at a time. And we're going to want this open anyway, so if it's not open, at the very left, hit physics. And this is Blender 2.71. If that clears up anything, there might be a little bit of differences on what version you have. If you don't have version 2.71 right now, it's the newest version, so go ahead and go get it. It's pretty cool. Next, convex hole. So select one of them, probably the very top one, and then select them all. Because, as a quick explanation of why we selected the first one, then them all, is if we select the first one, what we change over here will only affect this first one. But as soon as we change it over here, we're going to hit copy from active. So it will go to all of them, but just so we know what we're changing, that's why we selected the first one. And that happens with anyone. So if I select this one first, and then select the rest of them, we'd only be changing this one. But I like to be changing this top one. It's pretty easy to change that one. So let's go ahead and do that. And then we're pretty good on all this. We need to change the shape from convex hole to mesh. Quick explanation of each of these. Mesh is the longest render, or like the longest time to bake, but a box, these are how the physics interact, and none of these really work the right way. And the mesh just wraps it to the mesh. Like this, you can't have a ball that's kind of meshed in. It just doesn't work. All these will cause different things. Most of the other stuff we can leave alone. This and friction, self-explanatory, kind of just friction. And then this top one, because we don't want it to move, let's just hit dynamic right there. Dynamic means that gravity affects it. So, pretty much. I mean, there's probably some other, but as a quick, show, that's probably what it does. And then, if we hit Shift S, and we do cursor to selected, it will put the cursor right here. Then, if we change this, it's right here next to the viewport shading stuff. You may not have messed with this too much, but it's where it pivots. So if you hit 3D cursor and you hit select all of them and you hit rotate, it moves around that 3D cursor that's right there. We're going to move it just a little bit this way. So now when you hit Alt A, so they all explode. I think I had that same thing. Let's see. What have we got going on with all these? Oh, I know why. So select this one. Don't select the top one if you can. And then select the rest of them. We forgot to change this to mesh and then hit copy from active. So you could have done that earlier, but we don't want to because we want all the rest of them to be dynamic. We want gravity to affect them. But this first one we didn't. So, my bad. Now if you hit Shift A, you can see we now have a chain that works pretty good. Next, we're going to add a plane. And we want to turn off this pivot point. Or we want to turn it to active element. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And then I'm going to turn on collision. Now, I think I did that wrong. Not collision. Turn off collision and turn on rigid body. And we're going to also make that non-dynamic. So now it affects it just how we have this other picture. It kind of has that, it just falls on that plane down there. This is what I've got. This is the goal we're reaching for. Let me turn off this cube. So we have this chain, and it kind of just starts to drag. So just to give you kind of what we're shooting for here for a minute. We're kind of getting there. I'm going to lower the plane a little bit and see what we can get. I like it to just start dragging. So I'm going to go down a little bit more. You can get it however you want. And then when you get it where you want, pause it. So, and you can work with these buttons right here at the very bottom. Hit play until you get it just how you would like it. And you can hit reverse. Oh, I think I like that right there. So, next, what we're going to do is, oh man, I forgot to do one thing again. I forgot to add a texture to each one of these, but that's okay. Because when we go, let's change this from Blender render to Cycles render. I like Cycles a little bit better. And then what we're going to do is, if you go down here and I think, actually we don't even have to do that. We're not going to go to the node editor. We're just going to hit new, and we can just change this to glossy. And on mine that I just had a slight gray tint. Yeah, so I just moved this down just a little bit. And it took on the environment. So if that didn't make any sense, that's okay. We're not actually changing the color of this. The blue that it took for this render, the blue was actually reflection, the glossy from all this, which was pretty cool. So let's go ahead. You're not going to have to add that to each one of them. So just material 1, right click, material 1, right click. Make sure that you're getting just the links and not that plane down there. Material 1, material 1, material 1, material 1. If what I was going to do is I'm going to have you do this, and if you did this before you do the array, or you do it right as you made the array, it would do this, so you didn't have to change all those, but that's okay. It works out either way. And then what we can do is, let's change this camera position. So if you hit 0 and make sure that you're selected, so there should be like an orange box here, or yellowish. If you're not selected, just right click on the dotted box that's around it, so it should look like that. Just right click on it, you're not selected. Hit R twice and you can rotate it and kind of just position it how you would like it. I'm going to position it more or less how I did before, how I did mine, and you can watch it and kind of mimic what I'm doing if you would like, but there's not really any perfect way of doing this. So I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to move this over just a hair, and it shouldn't affect your chain or anything, because don't hit Alt A from now on. Once you have that position, you don't want to lose it. In fact, you should be able to come in here to the scene tab. It's like a sun, a ball, and a cylinder, and you can hit rigid body world right here. Just hit the check mark there. Now if you hit it Alt A, there's no more physics. You pretty much removed that. Along with that, if you wanted to do some different effects, the speed is kind of a cool thing to work with. Like if you want to move the camera around, but you want this to slow down as it's moving, or speed up, that's would be kind of cool what you want to do. So uh, next I'm going to add a box. So this is gonna be the room. So just make it fit in there. Use G, S, and R. Actually, you probably won't have to use R. You can hit Z to go into wireframe mode. Use your numpad keys 1, 7, and 3. 7 is top, 1 is front, and 3 is side. Use them to position this just how you would like it. I actually found that I like to keep it fitting the chain just in there and just barely fit it. So I just find that I like it like that. Make sure that your camera is in there. Like I just did, I found out that I didn't have it big enough. You have to have your camera in that box. And then hit 0. Make sure that you're out of your wireframe mode and make sure that it looks how you want it. And I think it looks pretty good. So also, if you would like to zoom in, or not necessarily zoom in, but move your camera closer to just forward, if you hit G and middle mouse button, you can kind of go forward and forward. Just kind of a useful tip. I might zoom in right there, give that nice little effect right there. And then we're going to play with some settings here in just a second, but I'm not going to quite yet. I'm going to turn on my GPU so that it runs a little bit faster for me. If you don't, you may not want to go into rendered view because we're working with some shiny objects here and it may go kind of slow depending on what you got. If not, you can just go back into solid, play with some settings here, and then check it with F12, and that's pretty much just your render setting, or your telling the computer to render it. That's how you do it. Hit escape to get out of that, and then make sure if you want to come out of camera mode, make sure that this cube is selected, and then you can go back in there. I'm gonna turn in on the rendered viewport shading. I know that I have this selected now, and I'm going to come over to the materials panel and hit new, and I'm going to change it to a blue, and I'm just going to leave it to diffuse. And as you can see, it changes. This is your most affecting color because it surrounds the chains, so whatever color you pick these, your chains are going to be that color. So you can pick them to be whatever color you would like them. I'm going to pick a slight blue, but I don't want them to be too dark. There's kind of a happy little medium here. So I'm going to lower the blue here, just a hint. Actually, I kind of like that color, so I'm going to leave it there. Next, I'm going to go and select the floor, which is what we use to collide it. And if you're in wireframe mode, make sure that this cube goes below that plane we used to collide. Even if you're not in wireframe mode and you're in solid, just make sure that this is above that, or else this won't even work for that. That and your chain will go underneath your floor that we're looking at, which won't look good at all. So go ahead, I'm going to go back in here and hit new, and I chose to leave it diffuse. And remember, if the more gloss you use, the more hardware intensive it's going to be, so it's going to take longer to render and it's going to be a little bit harder on your computer. I chose a slight orange, but it's on the bright side, and I'm just gonna lower this blue. and that. And it's kind of hard to see because it's so dark. So let's go ahead and add some light to our scene. What I did was I'm going to go back into my solid because you can't really see lights without that. I'm going to hit 1 to go on the front. I'm going to hit Z, and I'm just going to change this. I think I used an area, and it lit up the whole scene, so it was perfect for what I wanted. I'm just going to hit F12 to see what it does. It's pretty dark still. Let's see. I'm going to hit use nodes so we can control the strength of that. And I'm going to change it to 2000. Let's see. Oh yeah, we're getting some bright results now. So just by changing that light, it gives you some nice looking results there. You can actually see that it's a chain, and that the walls, the floor, it looks pretty good. But I'm going to offset the light. You don't have to do this. I just did it. And I'm going to change the direction so the shadow is seeable. So you can see the shadow there. I like the shadow. That's my preference. You don't have to do that, but I did. So next, we've pretty much done this whole tutorial. This is pretty much an added benefit thing. I'm actually going to go in here, and I'm going to move the camera this way a little bit, and move it up, so that I get more of the chain a little bit. I don't know if that made any sense, but it's a different angle. So I'm going to go wireframe mode, go to the side or front view, which is kind of the side of this, and over here I'm going to turn on the limits, and this pretty much shows you where it's going to focus. But it doesn't, it's going to focus right there. But we really don't have a size of our camera on there, so technically it's focused everywhere. So I'm just going to change this to 0.05, and I've seen that it works pretty good with the render that I had before, but we might have to change it, so because every little render is different, especially with physics, and we're dealing with some hard physics going on. So let's change the distance to right about there, and as you can see, this yellow line comes down. That's where it's focusing. So if you hit 0, let's see, we want it, I think we want to start focusing. Let's go back a little bit, because we can kind of see, we can see the start of it here, but it's not in the camera. So I'm going to start the focus right off the camera, and then like on the other one, I had like on Google Plus and YouTube, the focus animated clear down, and we're going to do that so that you can see it. And like I said, if you hit Alt A, after you remove those physics, you don't have to worry about all those chains moving. So we're going to go to frame 1 and just hit I right here. Hit F12 first. Yeah. So you can see it's pretty blurry. That's what we're wanting. But up here, it's getting focused, and it's blurry and blurrier as it goes down. So if we hit escape, we can go to the however long you would like your animation to be. If you only want it to be 100 frames, change the end to 100, and put your end distance. So let's see, we want to go to 3. Change your distance to focus at the very bottom, and hit I. And you can just drag this left to right. You don't have to put in numbers. Makes it pretty easy. And then you can see that if you hit I at both the first and the last, the distance, you can see this line moves, and without animating, you can know that it's going to focus at each place. So that's good. If we go to the camera view, if we go to like frame 50, it should be halfway in the middle. See, it's halfway in between the finish and the end. And then if we hit F12, it should be focus. It should defocus here and defocus here, but be in focus right here somewhere. And if we move it to like frame 20, it should be focused more up here and less down there, which is what it's done. So if you wanted to render this into a movie form, I found that MPEG or MPEG is a really good format. You can try out any of these, but if you hit that, you also need to go to hit RGB and then hit encoding and change this to MPEG4. Probably any of these would work. Just the best one that I found. MPEG gives a lot of good quality formats. If you have any better that gives you, if you have high quality results and low amount of space like that takes on your hard drive, please leave it, post it onto a comment, review it. I would like to know some more about this. If you can go into the video editor right here and add sound if you want that. You have to change this from none to at least something here. I use MP3. It comes out to be pretty good. So yeah, and then you can just hit animation here, and away it goes. It'll save it to whatever you have in your output, which is the TMP for me, which stands for temporary. I'm not going to quite render it because it'll take forever, and I don't think you want to stand through that. But, oh, one other thing. You need to change the sampling on the render to probably at least 100, and I'll show you that. If you hit F12, you get a much finer result. This doesn't have a lot of low light. If you have a whole bunch, if it's very dark, you'll need a higher, but it'll take a lot of time. If you have a bright one, you can kind of leave it low, but the higher you have this number, the better it will look. The other thing you need to take into consideration is its resolution. I have 920 by 1080, which is a normal standard output resolution, but it's only rendering at 50% of that. So technically I'm getting, I don't know, like 700, wait, that's completely wrong. I'm only getting like 1000 right here by 540 pixels. So if I were to change that to 100, I'm now getting 920 by 1080. So you can change this frame rate to whatever you'd like it. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial as much as I have. Hope you can see you next time.